Hello, everybody. Welcome. We have a great group tonight to discuss a hot button issue that is always relevant and has kind of been coming back around again. And big thanks to it's this direction I'm mirrored, but Mari for popping in. Unfortunately, Ashley is unable to make it tonight, and Marinez is coming in to discuss. So we're going to go around. Everyone can introduce themselves, but we are here to talk about this question of authors in reviewer spaces, author reviewer interactions, what is and isn't appropriate, experiences, and why it's an important thing to discuss. So if you want to go around and introduce yourself, everybody should be linked down below. Mari, I'm going to add you while you're doing that.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Marines. I'm here on YouTube, a lot on TikTok at My Name is Marines, review books and other media. I'm curious also for, sorry, Bethany, I'm like adding to your introduction, but I'm curious because I think maybe some of you have like aspirations to write or become authors, maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you are somebody who would like one day like to make the transition into an author.
Oh,
I'm writing a book, but
I'm not. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's like a distant maybe, but nothing. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, not a.
Yeah, I have a thing. I don't think it'll ever go. I don't think I'll ever want to publish it. No.
Also, Jaime is correct that Mari's lighting is like a bi-lighting dream.
That's true.
Amazing. Well, my FYP thinks I'm bi, but I'm not. So
yeah. I'm resentfully heterosexual. I saw someone say that the other day. I was like, yeah, that's
okay. Sorry, I totally
no. It's okay.
But
I mean, I am, but I get a lot of lesbians on my FYP.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway,
all right.
Rachel.
Yes, Rachel.
Oh,
introduction.
I am Rachel. I'm Rachel from Reads with Rachel, and I am here on YouTube, and I do a lot of very positive content talking about books that are so great. It's always just nothing but positivity over on my corner of the internet.
Always.
Good vibes only.
Yeah. Perfect.
And I'm Mara from Books Like Whoa. I did add a Patreon tier this year to force me to write a book.
Mm.
And I had not thought about that until just this moment, Mari. So giving me something, you know what? I got to write the book. I got to sell it. That's like a way down the line Mara problem. Not a today Mara problem.
Not a today Mara problem. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think one thing that could be interesting for this as well is to talk a little bit about how long all of us have been on the internet talking about things. Mari, I think you definitely have been on for the longest. And I think me and Mara started around the same time, but like I'm getting close to 6 years, I think.
Yeah, me too.
Which, yeah. And I think you see a lot of things over that time. Mari, how long have you been?
I don't think I was too much before you guys on BookTube, like joining BookTube. I think I'm 6 or 7 years at this point, but I was also a blogger first. Like I had Snark Squad and we were doing recaps and reviews over there. And like, I mean, my history dates back to like when I was first on the internet. Middle school Marines was like posting book reviews on like little websites. So
I love that.
I'm like the books I was reading in school, like The Work of Blackbird Pond was a great book. So, deep history here with book reviewing.
I love it. I
love that.
That's amazing.
Rachel, did you start around the same time as me and Bethany?
I started 4 years ago this year. So around 2019, right after my second kid was born. I was like, wow, I really need I was like, I really need
Same.
a thing. I need a thing that isn't being a mom. And then I stumbled across Sam from Thoughts on Tomes because I was looking up reviews for Furyborn, and I came across her channel, and I was like, wait, so people talk on YouTube just about books? Okay, I could do that. And
feel like
here we are.
I feel like we have very similar origin stories because, also my second kid had just been born and I needed a thing to do that was not just being a mom. And I went to BookCon and found out BookTube was a thing, and I was like, done. I can do that. Yeah. I see a question because I know some people might have missed the very beginning. Ashley, unfortunately, is unable to make it tonight. So Mari was very kind to very last minute agree to step in and add to this
I was
conversation.
literally in my pajamas and I was like, hold on, I'll be there.
I'm so impressed. I was like, it's so last minute, but why not? I'll ask.
You're better than I am because once like the bra's off, the pajama pants are on, I'm not talking to anybody for the rest of the day.
Oh, that's how you're getting me right now. I'm in my pajamas. I am.
Oh yeah, same.
Yeah, all the way.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so I think maybe a place to start with this is recent events. And Rachel, we can help if you don't want to talk about all of it on your own, but I know you've had a lot of really intense things happening. And also for anybody wondering, I know normally I have open comments on my live streams, but because Rachel recently has experienced some pretty intense harassment over this topic, it's limited just to people who have already been following me. So that is why that setting is on there for this evening. So
what was the question?
So we're talking about authors and reviewer spaces. I guess the question is like, let's talk examples of why it can be an issue to have authors too involved in what reviewers are doing on the internet about their books.
Hey, bud.
He has arrived.
We could just see like the top of his little head over your nose.
Yeah. Okay. So recent examples, or like the issue, I think, with having authors and review spaces, I think is, I don't know. I always kind of think about it about like reviews being sort of a conversation, right? That like a person is having with other, like I'm having with other readers about my experience. And it always feels like when an author enters into that like conversation, it's like you were overhearing this conversation and you butted in, and then that changes the dynamic of the entire conversation to have somebody there. And a lot of times that presence, like it very much does change the tone of the conversation, but it's just like reviewer to reviewer. Then when like the authors, they're like, what are you saying about my book, or like trying to defend anything. I don't need to defend your book to my opinions. Like that's not how this works. So the very presence of like an author inside of that conversation just feels disruptive to what a review even is.
Yeah, I feel the same. And something that I get in response to that is, well, you're having a discussion on the internet and anybody can be there. And I know that. The thing is that authors should just choose not to if it's about their book. Because first of all, in my opinion, it wasn't for you. It wasn't created in a way that had you being there in mind. And I'm not sure what you can take away from this that is actually beneficial to you. Because again, it wasn't created for you. It was created to benefit the reader of the book, a book that is already published. So like, what can I do for you that couldn't have been done pre-publishing? And sure, moving forward, you could take feedback from a review of a first book and move on to a second book, but you should be getting feedback from a person who you're working with pre-publishing anyway. So like my question is always, what can I do for you with an already published book in a review format that you can't get better elsewhere? So I just am not sure like what they're doing there. I mean, like commissioning me to help market and be honest so that they can possibly find readers, that's different. But just showing up, like I'm just not sure what you're getting out of watching my reviews of your book that you've already published. Like, what are you doing? I don't know what you're doing here. Like, I don't know how I'm helping you.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a different dynamic if you've invited an author into a space that you're curating. Like I have a podcast that I do like read-throughs of like speculative romance series. And the first season is one of my all-time favorite series. And I reached out to the author to see if I could interview her for it. And that was something I felt comfortable doing because I had read the series. I knew kind of like the direction it was going in. I knew kind of what her vibe was like and what I could stand behind the things that she put into the books. Like I felt fine about that. And, there are moments when I've reviewed subsequent books where I've had like critical things to say where it crosses my mind that like she or someone on her publicity team could potentially be hearing it. But there's nothing I'm saying in it that I feel like isn't honest and that I couldn't stand behind is like, well, this is my opinion. But she's a reasonable person who I'm willing to risk hearing me say something critical because I'm the one who invited her into that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely think there is a difference between inviting somebody in for an interview or a conversation, because I've done that too. I've had authors on panels and done author interviews. But yeah, it's different from when it's somebody who you're familiar with with their work. You're inviting them in to engage in a conversation with you versus something that you are putting out for other readers. Because I think that it's like, what is the purpose of a review? A review is different from, like a manuscript critique that is directed at an author. It is something that is for other readers to give them information. And I think one issue too is that there are authors who can get a little bit in their feelings, which I understand. Like you put a lot of yourself and, time and energy into this thing. Which is why you probably just shouldn't read your reviews or watch your reviews if it's going to bother you, which is probably a lot of authors. But like it makes sense that it would hurt your feelings. However, and I've heard people give this advice before, and I think it's a great example, is like, think of your favorite book ever that you think is the perfect, best book in the world. Go look on Goodreads and find some 1-star reviews of that book. Like there are going to be people who will hate even the book that you think is the most amazing, and people who will love it because we like different things and we take in different things. And so like, if you're writing a book, you're going to get negative reviews. And actually that helps your book anyway, because like one person's negative thing might be another person's buzzword that makes them want to pick it up. So.
Well, and imagine if, let's say that you just saw a movie and it was not good. And the main thing that was not good was the main actor. And you're at lunch with your friend and your friend is asking you like, hey, did you see this new movie? And you're like, oh yeah, I saw it. But like the main guy in it, just like terrible acting. And all of a sudden you hear like a throat clearing behind you. And that person is sitting right behind you. Like in that moment, what happens is that the entire conversation switches from being two people talking about a piece of media and like why you didn't like something and why you might not recommend it to your friend, to like managing that person's feelings, because like you're a decent human being who like doesn't want to be a jerk to someone. But like, so were you in a public place? Yes, but it was not the conversation you were having was not directed at the person who is in the media. It was between two people within the context of that public space.
I think interesting too, like Rachel, you mentioned, and this has happened to me every time that I've talked about like authors and reader spaces too, where authors will come back and insist like, well, I can because, you know, you're posting it publicly. You are in a public space, right? Well, I can respond if I want to. And as much as like I agree with you, Rachel, like I don't form my reviews to be constructive. I don't like I'm not sitting here and saying this had XYZ problem and this is how the author should fix it. I don't care how the author, like that part of constructive criticism is not in my review. But even so, some authors will come and insist and say, no, reviews are really helpful to me. And so like the thing is that yes, you can respond. You can do whatever the heck you like. We're talking about sort of best practices. We're talking about what is reasonable. We're talking about what reviewers are asking. You know, we're here giving you free promotion like 97% of the time, and all we are asking is that you kind of leave the space to reviewers and to that like sort of exchange between reader and reader, you know. So like that, well, I can if I want to. I also don't understand how that is a good marketing strategy, how that is a good look for any author. What in the PR is you in my comment section fighting with me over my opinion? In what world is that like?
Because then all the rest of the reviewers who see that are like, I'm not touching your book with a 10-foot pole.
Very that. Very that. Yeah.
So yes, authors can do whatever they want. We absolutely agree there. We totally get it. I am on the internet, so I am sort of inviting conversation and comment. What we're talking about is, should they be in my comment section?
Yeah, what we're really discussing is like etiquette and how we should interact with each other. People that because I talked about this recently, I did a whole video on it, and people were like, well, I just don't understand why you want to make it so that they can't. And I'm like, no, see, the way that you're wording that is almost as if I'm trying to implement something that makes it illegal or bars them, like something pops up on their computer, like, you're an author, you shouldn't be reading your own reviews. What I'm saying is, it's sort of like how you don't walk into somebody's house, eat their food, and then say, ugh, I didn't really like this. Sort of how we just have like these common normal things that we do between humans. I think one of those things should be for readers that we don't tag authors in reviews. And I think on the author side of it is that the etiquette should be that you don't show up in the comments arguing with me. Or really, I don't want them to say anything, to be honest, because then that's going to make me feel like, for me, and other reviewers feel differently. For positive reviews, you know, they feel differently. But for me, I'm like, oh no, I did not make all those jokes thinking that you were going to show up here. Really awkward.
Yeah. Well, people get very fixated on like the can, and I'm like, you can do anything, but like there are consequences to every action. Like when, like a great example is appropriation of AAVE. Yes, sorry. I'm halfway into this glass of wine and I'm already struggling. I should probably slow down. You can do that, but people will look at you a certain kind of way. Like you can't, it's a free country. You can do anything, but people get very fixated on like, well, you're telling me I can't do this or I can't do that. It's like, yes, okay, you can. But like you cannot, you can't then also say that you own controlling people's responses to what you've chosen to do. Like you can't have both of those things. I'm telling you, if you don't want this response from readers, you shouldn't do this. If you do this, you can't control the fact that readers are going to feel a certain kind of way about it.
Yeah, and then the next step that the conversation takes is, well, not all authors are doing that. And I'm like, that's great, but I don't know which one of you is going to turn into the next Kathleen Hale. So I make it a blanket statement that I think that none of you should be watching reviews of your own books, just so that we have that idea that we should just stay away from that. That way that we don't have the next Kathleen Hale.
It's for those who are unfamiliar with the history of Kathleen Hale, anybody wanna?
Kathleen Hale stalked a reviewer to her house and left a copy of a book on her doorstep because she was convinced that the reviewer was catfishing her by going by a pseudonym online. And even if she was, going by a pseudonym, going by a different name and had like a completely different life, that's separate from the issue of she reviewed a book and Kathleen did not like that review. Two different things. So, her doing something, possibly Blythe, the reviewer, doing something that seems like she's, going by like an alternate personality on the internet is not, she deserves to be stalked and harassed at her home. So,
No. And I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but Rachel, like, you have had some pretty
yeah,
wild authors. Speaking of harassment, yeah.
I don't know what I can even say that hasn't already been said by, me, Mari, everybody else. It's just, I'm just here to make stupid internet videos and entertain my audience and talk about books that I read. And I don't form my reviews unless I was commissioned. I don't form my reviews thinking that these authors are going to show up and talk to me, let alone get so upset that they go to like these very wild lengths. I don't make that stuff for them, and they can just avoid it. And I think there's like a similar theme with like, we are content creators, yes, and there are corners of the internet that talk about us as well.
Yeah.
And just like authors, I want them to stay out of my space. I no longer enter those spaces talking
Same.
about me and my content because it's not for me. Those people are not talking to me, and it's not my business what other people think of me and content I've already put out, unless they're in my comment section engaging in a conversation with me, similar to like how an author can make a website or a Facebook group or a Reddit group and talk to people who want to talk to them. Like, that's not for me, so I don't consume that. And I think that we could avoid harassment if we all took on that idea. And somebody said I've been harassed a little by a famous author. Like, the amount of people messaging me saying, I saw what happened to you and this happened to me, from big authors and smaller authors. It's like, this is an ongoing problem. So that whole, it's not every author, it's enough that it's a major issue.
Yeah.
Clearly, like, we have to keep having this conversation until more people adopt these better policies, like personal policies, that they don't do things that are going to lead them to what's happening.
Yeah.
So,
and Mata, you've had some of those problems too, right? Like, or has it been authors or just their fandoms?
Mostly their fandoms. I haven't had a lot of authors really respond to me. I mean, like smaller things, like ELJ blocked me when I was recapping.
I feel like that's a badge of honor somehow.
Yeah. In the history of the world. When I was talking about Lightlark, Alex Astor came into my comment section to be like,
that's what I was thinking.
Well, actually,
I am very privileged, but that didn't help me publish. And I was like, ma'am, what are you doing here? Please vacate immediately. This is not helping anybody. So I've had like some interactions. I've also had like authors respond positively, and like if I review something and they're like, thank you so much. And I always am of two minds of that. I'm like, oh, like that. Like, I'm happy you're happy. And then we had this, but it's also like, I don't know, that like tricky territory of like, well, now that we've had this interaction, is this like an invitation for you to do more? And also, even in my positive reviews, like I can still critique certain elements. So like looking at that, like, I don't know how comfortable I feel. So it's been very much smaller scale, not anywhere near as much as Rachel received, but yes, I definitely have my stories as well.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like if you've been reviewing books for any length of time, you get some degree of it. And I have mixed feelings about the positive reactions. I'm more okay with it when it's private, I guess, because I have had authors privately reach out to say, like, about positive reviews, to say, "I saw and this was amazing," and, like, that is like, I don't mind that. Um, although I know some people like Rachel, you you might mind that,
I don't
which
love
is
it.
fine. Yeah.
I'm like Maddie, where I'm like, oh, ah.
Yeah.
The only time I'm like completely fine with it is with
Mhm.
nonfiction. So like Dr. Rebecca Hall wrote a nonfiction graphic novel. She's a historian and she talks about like the history of women-led slave revolts in this graphic novel. It's fantastic. And she apparently watches my videos because every time I talk about her book, she's like, "Oh, thanks for shouting it out." I'm like, "Hi." That is nonfiction.
Yeah.
And I've had 2 nonfiction authors reach out and say, "Oh, thanks for reviewing." Thankfully, I don't have a lot of people who didn't commission me show up on my positive reviews. It's always the negative one.
Yeah.
I feel like oh, I was just gonna say, I've had authors, like, when I do my anticipated reads videos, pop up either privately or in the comments being like, "Thank you for including my book." And, like, while again, it's not a negative interaction, I will say I've taken a couple of books off my TBR from that because, like, I just don't like, what if I don't like it?
Yes.
Mhm.
You know, like, if it's a book that I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like, maybe not, but if it's one that was a little bit more like, "Oh, this is kind of on my radar," and, like, "This sounds kind of interesting," it's like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
don't really wanna risk this because if I don't like it, I know that you're around, and, like, I just would rather avoid it because I don't want a negative interaction if I don't like it."
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's reasonable. I think I kind of have made my peace with the fact because, like, there are a decent number of authors who I know regularly watch my content and have, like, asked me to review their books because of that and stuff like that. So I've just kind of gotten okay with, like, although I'm not super mean about things usually, but, like, I've just kind of gotten okay with, like, I'm just gonna say what I say, and if you don't like it, you're gonna have to just, like, sorry, I don't know. But I don't feel like people should have to do that if they don't want to, you know?
There's a certain sense too that I get that people are like happy to say that this boundary should exist, except for if they think that you've crossed some boundary, their own personal boundary of being sort of mean. Or being negative or whatnot. There is this imaginary line that they have in their head where if your review is from here to here mean, authors should not interact. But if you get this mean, like authors can interact. And to be clear, I'm not talking about bullying an author. I'm not talking about getting on the internet and being
Yeah.
like, you're ugly and your mama is too, because that's
Right.
not a review. We're talking about reviewing a work. I cannot be mean to a book because the book doesn't have feelings. And so it doesn't matter what the content of my review of that book is. If, again, if I'm talking about the author in any sort of personal way, a bullying sort of scenario, that's different. But if I am reviewing a book, there is no imaginary line that takes this review into the territory of like, oh, well, now I can be harassed by the author who wrote it.
That's
I think
such a good
there's a lot
point.
of people who like that's kind of the caveat that they have on this. Like, yeah, you deserve peace in your social spaces until you're too mean to the book that I love. And then it's
Yeah.
like, that's not how this works.
Well, and I wonder what you guys think about the gendered element of that because it makes me think about so there was a romance blog. I just don't read blogs very much anymore, but I followed it for years called Smart Bitches Trashy Books. And the whole reason it got started was because within romance reviewing spaces, there was a taboo about being negative at all about a book. Like basically the feeling was like everybody judges us for reading romances and we should all just be positive. Like I don't want to hear anything negative about these books ever. And
Mhm.
like that was kind of a part of what they did was like no, like we actually want to review these books critically because like they deserve to be assessed the same way you would assess any book. Like I want to do this, I want to engage with them thoughtfully. And they got a lot of pushback and I've heard the site owners, is that the creators of
Mhm.
the of the blog talk about that kind of gender dynamic within romance reviewing spaces of like, well, girls are supposed to be nice to each other. They're not supposed to be mean. You're being a mean girl.
Yeah.
So that when you said that, Mari, it just kind of made me think about, I also wonder if there's a, well, girls are supposed to be nice. They're not supposed to be mean like that.
Yeah. I think that there definitely is. I think that there is that dynamic. I think that, you know, I saw somebody saying in the comments earlier that this seems to be happening more lately. And like, we all have these stories. And like, I think they mentioned on Goodreads, even seeing people like editing their reviews and being like, I was harassed by the author kind of thing. So like the uptick of this, I think, you know, comes down to maybe like a lot of toxic sort of positivity or weaponized positivity that is like making the rounds in bookish spaces again, as sort of part of a cycle. Because I think that when I entered BookTube, one of my first videos was like, I give negative reviews, and I think it is my first video. I do negative reviews, and here's why. Because nobody was doing negative reviews, or like not nobody, but like very few people. It was all positivity, happiness, and sunshine. Don't say anything bad about books. We love them. So I came out of the gate like, no, I'm gonna give a negative review. And I think that cycle went back around to like a place where it's like there are people now who like just give negative reviews, you know, so we kind of went through that cycle. And I think we're swinging back around to the toxic positivity of like, don't talk bad about books.
Yeah.
I think that that's definitely a factor in this as well, where people are just like, no, you can't say anything bad about books. And so that gives authors sort of the right to defend the thing that they've created, which is wild.
Which is weird, right? Because why is it that we treat books that way? We don't treat films that way. Like, people don't get weird about people making negative reviews of movies or like jokey reviews of like, it's fine. But for whatever reason, people feel like books are media. They're not like, they don't need to be on this like higher pedestal. They're like, media criticism applies across.
Rotten Tomatoes literally is rating it on how many tomatoes to throw
I mean, yeah.
at the movie. Like,
yeah.
I think part of that is sort of like, it's also, I think it feeds into this conversation about like what we do about problematic books and how that's different and we process it differently than like a problematic movie or whatnot. Because a book is so much the product of like, not really one person, right? Because you've got the whole publishing process, but we see it so much as like the product of one person made this thing. That author is so tied to that work. Whereas a movie, you've got a bunch of actors, the director, the studio, and like all of the blame or all of the acclaim kind of gets spread out so much. But I don't know, there's something about a book that we like hold in such high esteem and we tie so closely to the creator that I think it starts to muddy some of the waters of review.
Book Terror.
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Rachel.
No, I just wanted to say I agree. I think that it's because it's so personal to the author that people don't see book reviews and movie reviews as the same, because it's almost like because one person for the most part works on this book, if you review critically, you are attacking that one person, versus with a movie, it's like so split up amongst many people that people seem to think that it loses that like personable quality, and you're no longer attacking a singular person or many persons. You're just attacking the content itself, which I wish that people wouldn't think like that, because that's not what, although I get accused of because I do authors behaving badly, people are like, you are attacking the author, which, okay, well, some of them have literally done murder, so okay. I try to keep them separate. I try to keep them separate, where I do, like, I review their book and I will also do an author's behaving badly, because I do think there is a difference between this person's book and this person. So I try to keep them separate for that reason. Yeah, that's typically like one of the things that people are saying was like, you're just attacking the person. It's like, well, no, the book is just garbage. I'm sorry.
Well,
I don't know what to tell you.
I wonder, because I kind of think of it in like three gradients. There's like critical book reviews, which I think are like definitely fair game no matter what, basically, where you're just talking about the book. Then you have like within that elements that you could be critical of that do in some way reflect on the person who wrote it.
Yeah.
So like I'm thinking specifically of like problematic. I know we hate that word now, but like anything, like any of the isms, like that's kind of this gray area where it's like, well, I can't tell if this is authorial intent. I can't, I'm a Southern white lady. I'm sure when this book comes out, I probably need some people to read it because like I'm not going to intend to do anything problematic, but like look the people I grew up around. You know what I mean? Like there's that. And then there's authors who are doing bad things and like they're public figures in the same way that I can be like, I think Elon Musk is a POS. Like to some degree, it's like you are like I think it gets a little different for me if it feels like you're punching down, like they're just like some rando.
Yeah.
But
Like a little indie author or something.
yeah,
Like,
but I'm never gonna feel bad about criticizing like J.K. Rowling. Do you know what I mean? Like she is a gajillionaire with more power than I will ever have, and like I feel like she's a public figure who I can be critical of. You know what I mean? Like, but it's hard. I think it gets a little murky between the like authorial intent in a work.
Yeah. I think the power dynamic, one of the things, like one of the reasons that I think that authors should stay out of comment section is because of the power dynamic, the power imbalance between an author and a reviewer. And a lot of people think that that's only because like of an audience size thing, that this author might have a larger audience than I do. And that is certainly part of it. That can be part of the dynamic. But even if it's an author who has a smaller audience than mine, there is still a power imbalance in that they are the author of the work. And so they are always seen as the authority on their own work. And so they're entering into my opinion space to tell me that I am wrong with the authority that they have as the author of that work. And that feels bad. That feels weird. That feels counterintuitive to what a review is. And that kind of feels counter to like another reason that I think you should stay out of review spaces, because reviews need to be able to exist on their own. And I'm this is like very like, I don't know, like elevated highbrow sort of argument, but like if we want art to like persist, I think that art is like very much tied to the consumption and criticism of it. And if we want the consumption and criticism of it to continue, it needs to be able to happen independently and not be like sort of stifled or shut down by the presence of the author. And so that's the kind of power imbalance that I'm thinking about when an author shows up in my comment section to argue with me or to tell me that I'm wrong. I don't want you here and I don't need you here.
I'm glad that you said that, because I have a hard time like trying to piece together and like articulate what the power imbalance is there. It just feels icky to me, even if it's an indie author who doesn't have like the actual power of like a publisher and an agent and this huge following. But there is still an authority there with indie authors where it does feel like a violation because of a power dynamic. So I'm glad you said that, because that's one of the questions I get is, well, what if it's an indie author? They don't have any power. And like, well, I don't feel like that. I feel like they do because they wrote the book. So I actually think that this is a really good question.
Which one?
If an author were to reach out to you to send an ARC, ask for a review because they watch and enjoy your content, would that feel icky for any of you? I don't know about y'all, but for me, if an author reaches out, I get to decide whether or not I want to engage with them. And that's the whole thing, is I look up every single author who asks that of me, and I find out, have they been harassing reviewers? Have they been, bothering people, saying shitty stuff on the internet? And then I get to decide whether or not I want to work with them and interact with them in that way. And then the review context does kind of change, because I go in knowing that the author is probably going to watch. So I am very, I try to be more helpful than I am, making jokes. So I'm trying to be more helpful for the author in my critiques of the book. And I'm trying to say like who I think this book is for and who I think this book is not for, so that it reaches the right readers and helps the author. So that's the way that I approach that. But again, I get to decide on a case-by-case basis. If an author just shows up unwarranted, I didn't decide that. There was no agreement.
It doesn't feel icky to me. I do get it sometimes feels a little annoying. And I apologize to authors. I know you're just doing your job.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels very like door-to-door salesman with like the number of requests that you can sometimes get. And I'm just like, oh my God, this can't be effective.
Yeah.
But I don't begrudge authors who are reaching out. It doesn't feel icky to ask for, like, to offer an arc or ask for a review. My personal review policy is that I never accept books for review. I accept books. If you want to send me, listen, it's going to go in that TBR pile. I make no promises.
Yeah.
Also, like I might hold it up for promotion, and I do take sponsored posts for promotion. I will
Mhm.
never accept money for a review. That is just the line I've drawn in the sand for myself, is that I don't accept books or I don't accept monies for specifically to give a review. And that way it just keeps things incredibly clear for me in terms of like what I'm doing for myself to protect my boundaries. So that's the way that I've personally approached it.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to what I have. Like I will consider a book for review if you have your publicist or the publisher reach out to me, because then I feel like it's less like one to one. I'm too much of a people pleaser. That's the bottom line. So like it's just I know it would affect my review, and I just don't want to muddy the water because I just don't want it in the back of my mind of like, what is Susie thinking about me now
Mhm.
as I talk about how shit this book is. Um, so I just yeah, for me it's easier to just keep it clean. Like I will do sponsorships or like promotion, but I won't take money for review because again, I just know personally I could not keep that a clear boundary.
Mhm.
I think that a lot of people think that feel that way and don't. For me, because I have presented myself a certain way, I only get people who are willing to commission me to read their books, knowing that I might eviscerate every single line and be very critical of the book. And they know that when they commission me, and I haven't had a problem so far. Um, which I'm very thankful for. But I do always worry that one of these days I'm going to get a commission and somebody agrees to the terms. You can't throw a hissy fit if I, one star your book and I list in 7 paragraphs all the problems with it. You can't expect a good review from me. You have to expect an honest review from me because I can't lie to my audience. That would be unethical. Um, and so thankfully I have had no problems so far, but I do always worry that somebody will present themselves as one way and I'll look into them and see that they've been fine so far, but then like my review will turn some switch in them and they'll, turn on me and I'll have to deal with another issue. So I do worry about that sometimes.
Yeah. I I don't know. I get this quite a bit and I will take some of them and not take others. I think I've gotten pickier about which things I will accept from authors who reach out to me like this. It and so if I think there's a like reasonably high chance that I'm not going to love the book that they're offering, I won't. I just like probably won't respond or like won't take it. Um or if I see something about the author that is questionable, or like I also have a policy now where I don't do um debut indie authors anymore because like I feel like they need more time to kind of hone their craft generally. And because I do like I similar to Rachel, like I am very honest and I have had authors who were not pleased with that who sent me a book for review and I weren't pleased that I was very honest with them. But like that's like yeah, so I will accept some. And I'm more likely to if it's a book that sounds interesting and where I can tell that the person writing the email isn't just saying that they like my channel, but like they actually know something about my taste. Like you can tell where it's like a canned email versus somebody who
Oh
like
my God,
genuinely,
yes.
Like your YouTubes.
yeah.
I think your video content creation is perfectly aligned to my
With yeah, and like the people who
whatever.
are and it's a book that's completely not anything I would ever read. Yeah. No, but
Yeah.
like I do get people like genuinely reaching out, and I'm open to it if it sounds something that's interesting. But I'm picky about it, and honestly too, because of what I review, like I'm and because of my experiences, I'm less likely to give the benefit of the doubt to white men because they're the people I have had some positive experiences with like indie authors who are white men, but also most of my worst experiences have been with them, and so I'm pickier about that. So,
Yeah. I
you
also
know.
just get, I know you guys, I'm sure do too. I just get a lot of emails at this point. Like literally, I just like wait till Saturday to start trying to go through them. And yeah. So I don't, it made my life easier when I made it known I wasn't accepting indie things for review, because I would say my email volume dropped by like 50%. I was like, oh, okay, this is manageable again.
Yeah.
Yes, I do this too. I appreciate
Oh
this.
yeah.
If I have, and I think that's important. Like if I have a relationship with the author that I'm like friends with them or something, I always disclose that
Yeah.
because
Like I always say when I'm talking about Alexa's books, like I can't be impartial. Like I consider her to be a friend.
yeah,
I do genuinely like her books.
yeah,
Luckily, that would be very awkward if I didn't. Um,
Yeah.
but you can't, I mean, you can't fully trust that I'm unbiased, because I can't tell if I'm fully unbiased, you know?
right.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
will say one of the times one of the times that an author responded to one of my reviews and I actually got a giggle out of it was because of this, that I'm like very careful about like disclosing if I have a relationship. And one time many years ago, I worked for a company that Hank Green owns. So like and it was like a temporary thing I worked for. And so in my review, I was like, full disclosure, many years ago, I worked for this company and I read his book, and not like he's ever going to see this review, but I just wanted to let you know. And on Twitter, he replied and he's like, I saw the review. And I was like, oh. It was like, never in a million years will he see this.
Hank, you are.
Why are you reading your review?
Yeah, Hank, get out of the review comments. Get out of here.
That's it. Author's behaving badly.
Yeah, yeah. Put Hank on blast.
Known bad guy, Hank Green.
Yeah, right.
Known horrible person.
My one and only pass goes to Hank Green. He was allowed to respond.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there any? Well, like, I mean, if Alona Andrews heard my podcast and reached out to me, I would have no problems. I would, even if they were like, "How dare you be critical of our beautiful work?" I'd be like, "I know, I'm so sorry. Like, you're right. My bad."
There are authors who, if they reached out to me, I would not be mad. I would be in awe. Elizabeth Acevedo is one.
N.K. Jemisin. Oh my
N.K.
god.
Us
Robin
bringing
Hobb.
everything we just said to fangirl.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's
sorry.
like the
I'm
equivalent
sorry.
of having a list of hall passes in a relationship. I think everyone's allowed to have like a little list of five
Like
favorite
author
authors. It's like, you know what, you get a pass. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's true. Like as I assume that that she wouldn't harass me because I love every single word that Elizabeth Acevedo says. So I just assume if she showed up in my comments, it would be like, "Oh, thanks for reading," and I'd be like, "You're welcome. Hi, I love her. So I couldn't be mad."
I think you're real cool. Okay, thanks.
No, there aren't exceptions.
No, there are no exceptions. There's a simple personal hall pass for Elizabeth Acevedo, and that's it. If your name is not Elizabeth Acevedo, if you did not write Clap When We Land, you don't get a hall pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I need to, like Ross on Friends, when he like laminates his little card of them. I feel like I need to like laminate a little, like, here's my top 5. You have a pass.
Oh,
I got some questions about this at one point that I think are pretty common questions. So one of them is, how can an author improve if their only source of criticism is, instead of reviews, editors and beta readers? If they can't interact with a wider range of opinions and criticisms than that, how are they going to improve their next story beyond how they did with the first? Expecting an author to improve while in the same breath telling an author to stay away from reviews of their own story just doesn't work logically to me.
Well, I've seen, maybe it was Alexa who said this. I've seen authors talk about how they have a friend or an editor or an agent who will go through and curate helpful critical
Yeah.
reviews that are saying something that they think would be actually beneficial to that person's writing.
Yeah.
So it's that way they're not the ones personally having to wade through it, and they're just kind of getting like, here's a anonymized headline of like something you can work on. I
Mhm.
think if you want critical reviews of any kind, that seems to be a much safer way to do it, is like,
Yeah.
Bethany, can you go look through my Goodreads and pull me like 10 helpful critical reviews, take the names off, and we'll like have
And
some wine and read them together, and I'll cry
yeah,
and then think about
Yeah.
them.
and the thing about that is that having somebody else do that, they're less likely to fixate on one review that says one line that may or may not
Yeah.
be true, but will be like hurtful for the author, and they might
Right.
fixate on that. Whereas another person can go through 10 reviews and pull out like the same issue being present in multiple reviews and then report that back to you. Whereas you're going to waste your time and get upset with
Yes.
one review that says one line about, something that hurts your feelings. Another person can say, well, here's the bullet points, move on to your next book with this feedback.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing about it's not that I don't think that reviews can be helpful. Like reviews can certainly like there can be patterns within reviews, but the problem is that for every even if you look on Goodreads, what you mostly see with books is that they end up in a bell curve. They average out to this 3.5 place where it's like, okay, like every book is like, because you're going to collect so much data that it's going to be kind of meaningless at some point. Because for every single person that says your book was amazing 5 stars, you can find one more that says that sucked 1 star. And so it becomes of like a case of curation of who do you listen to and how deep do you have to dive into reviews to get useful information out. And the problem is that in that process of trying to glean useful information from reviews, you're going to hurt your own feelings. And when you hurt your own feelings, you can't, or you can, but you shouldn't do anything about that. Like you can't, come out swinging because you went to go hurt your own feelings. Like, and I mean, I think my reviews are great, but I'm also like not going to sit here and say that my review is going to be better for you in any way than your like developmental editor or your agent or your industry professional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just look there.
Well, and like I think with that, right, is that there's two things happening with reviews that yeah, there might be some critical feedback that is actually useful, but there's also just differences in taste. So
Yeah.
like half of it is figuring out so some of it might be like improving your craft and some of it is just finding your audience because like you're not everybody's going to like your book even if you're really good at writing what you write because not everybody's going to like the thing you write and and you can't take that personally because that's just kind of part of the deal that goes with it.
Yeah, I mean, people have said it throughout in the chat, but negative reviews can be as good for your book promotion as positive ones.
Yeah.
If the reviewer makes it funny with their negativity, I've had books like Mari and Jess made me try reading Zodiac Academy because I was like, I have to try it. Like, what is this? Now I
so
failed
bad.
to read it.
Sorry.
I bailed after like 2 chapters, but I tried. Like, so I think there's that. But then also I have people who literally follow me because they have the opposite taste I do.
Yeah.
So if I love a book, they're gonna Or if I love a book, they think they're gonna hate it. If I hate it, they're gonna love it.
Yeah.
Or if I give 2 stars to a romance because it was too angsty and I don't like enemies to lovers, that's half of Book Talk's favorite things. So they're gonna be like, oh great, I'm gonna go read that.
Right.
There are 2 people, and I refuse to say who they are because they don't know me and I don't know them outside of Goodreads. I follow these 2 people on Goodreads, and I follow them religiously because I love every time they hate a book, because I'm like, that's it. That's my
I
new
have somebody like that
my
too
new
on Goodreads. Yeah.
that's it. That's my new favorite book. She hated it. I'm so ready. I get so excited when they 2-star a book, the two of them, because I'm like, yes, finally,
Yeah.
finally, I eat good. And like,
I
I think that's great. And I hope that I do that for somebody. There's tons of people that come into my comments that are like, oh, your review so funny, but I love this book. And I'm like, good. I'm glad. I'm happy that, you know, we can disagree, but you're still having a good time. Because that's me with those two women on Goodreads. God love them. They're wonderful.
I have somebody like that on TikTok, and it's really funny because we actually like a lot of the same thing. Like we love flowery writing and things like that, but to in like different ways. Like I want my flowery writing to add something to the text, and she just loves like dense flowering for the sake of it. So like her reviews are like the opposite for me. So good. If she's like, this was so flowery, I loved it, I'm like, bet off my tube. She's like, it wasn't flowery enough. I'm like, immediately to the library.
Oh my
You know
gosh.
what
Or like, you know, if I have people like if I'm on Goodreads and I see that, I'm trying to think, like Madi, you're one of them, but there's a few people who I'm like, they gave that 5 stars. Let's look further, because like I know that they're, you know, pretty critical readers. So if they're giving it the full 5 stars, like
So
I want to, let's see if I'm interested in this book.
4 and 1 hair. That's
Yeah,
like-
exactly.
Yes, reviews are, they can be incredibly. Every time I post about Sarah J. Maas, I convince one other person to try her work. So, am I doing the Lord's work or the devil's work? I don't know.
Maybe both.
And every single time I post any negative review, at least one person shows up and says, I think I'll probably like this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
enjoy your time.
More power to you. Yeah.
Well, and then there's also some readers who I keep my eye open for their reviews because they might see something in a book that I wouldn't necessarily see, like especially if it has something to do with a marginalized identity that I don't share. It's like, oh, well, damn, there's my privilege not even clocking that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Either
Yeah,
maybe I'll still read the book, but I'll keep that in mind, or maybe I don't want to read it at all. Like, but I'm glad to know that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Maddie is that reviewer for me, so there's a lot of stuff that I won't even pick up on, that because she's so much smarter than I am, she will. So I'll be like, oh, I did not, that didn't even occur to me whatsoever. And honestly, it not only makes me have a better appreciation of my reading experience, because now I can go back and I can read through a different lens, but it also makes me a better reviewer. So I appreciate that.
I agree. It's like show of hands in the comments if Madi has made you realize something you didn't see in a book.
I know. Well, it's like like Ashley's definitely one of those reviewers for me who, like, if I see that she gave something 1 or 2 stars and she talks about the problems in it, I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I probably don't need to read this. But
I will say I have a question too, and I know we're closing in on an hour, but I want to bring this back around to my favorite and least favorite platform, and your favorite and least favorite platform, TikTok.
Oh. My time drain.
Because I this happened on BookTube too in my early. Oh, stop, you guys! I can't.
No.
True.
So this happened on BookTube too. If you think back to your early days of BookTube, where like BookTube was like a thing, and slowly AuthorTube kind of started becoming its own thing. But then we hit this point where like the first booktubers were getting published, and there was that like weird moment of like, do we review their books? Like, do we talk about it? Do we not talk about it? And the people who were giving positive reviews were being called liars, and the people who were giving negative reviews were being called bullies. And it was like a whole thing. Because I think that there is a lot of, right, we talk about it in like very like, I don't know, sort of black and white terms, like authors stay out of review spaces. But I think in early book communities, and I think especially on TikTok, where there's no way to really sort of, you can curate, but there aren't those defined separations. Your FYP feeds you stuff.
Mhm.
It's so much harder, I think, for authors to stay out of our spaces. And because this is a newer
Yes.
community, it just started all as one, like readers. And so now
Yeah.
like book talkers are becoming authors, and authors who were giving reviews before, but now they're like, should we as published authors be giving reviews? So there's a lot of like
Mm,
trying to figure out the space that is happening on Book Talk. And I think Book
Mhm.
Talk is like especially messy for authors just being in the comments
mhm.
of reviews and being like,
Yeah.
what are you doing here? So I know you guys all are on TikTok as well. Do you guys see this happening? Does it remind you of BookTube? Do you think it's worse on TikTok? Like, what's your general
Yeah.
feel of
I
that?
do think it's worse on TikTok because of the nature of the FYP, but I will say, and you and Sam did hilarious videos, I think. Sam's in particular, I'm remembering from the beginning of the year of like, here's the bingo card of like the
Yeah.
things that are going to come up, like because TikTok is going through all the same conversations that we've been having on Twitter and on YouTube, and it's like, okay, now it's your turn to have the round of
Yes.
conversations about like, should you be buying books, authors and reviewer spaces.
Consumerism.
Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
all like they're doing
Like,
all
here
of
it
those,
comes.
but you have the extra messiness of you said it so well, of just like an author could completely intend to not be in a reviewer space at all, but it's TikTok, and like they may just get served a negative review about themselves. Like, yeah, I mean, I just think that invites additional mess because it takes a lot of discipline, I think. It's like
Yeah.
self-discipline to just like scroll as quickly as you can past it, or if you're going to watch it, to not engage. Like that
You
is
know what? People
hard.
should be like Katie Robert and Tasha Suri, who are wonderful on TikTok and don't engage in reviews.
Yeah.
Like, I feel, it's like watch what they do and do that.
Yeah.
I think too, TikTok has a lot of indie authors. And this
Yeah.
is not to
Mhm.
say anything bad about indie authors, but just that they don't have the same sort of machinery behind them.
Yeah.
They don't have the PR person that is like, Susie, don't do it. Like, delete
Get in
immediately.
your group chat. Do
Yeah.
not put this on on
Well,
me.
and I think with that too, there's like a different etiquette that indie communities have developed on their own in other spaces, but I think
Mm,
it's really coming to bite them when they get to places like TikTok. Like I think I've not loved the way that they've handled things, even like on YouTube and Goodreads, that they of like responding to reviews and stuff like that. But I think TikTok is where that's starting to actually become more of a problem.
I think too, because of the parasocial aspect of it, where a lot of
mm.
these like indie communities, like it is a feature of it that you can interact with the indie author, and that
Yeah.
there is this like,
Mm.
like where, you might not ever get to talk to Elizabeth Acevedo. You can talk to Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti, like whatever.
Kay Webster, all in your DMs.
Whatever it might be, right? Because they're like they're closer to their community, and that becomes like I see so many TikToks about like indie author signings and like exclusive communities and things that are built around interaction with the author. And so there's that sense of like, ooh, this is cool, but no sense of like, wait, the line is stepping into a review. Like that's cool for your like
Right.
Facebook group, but if you're coming into a review, that's like a totally different interaction.
That
But
you can opt
how
into that engagement,
right.
and so the authors start to assume that everybody wants it, but
Correct.
that's
Yes.
not the case.
No.
No. Well, and I wonder too with TikTok, because so much of it is people who love books and started making TikToks about them, but don't have a history of actually being reviewers,
Mm,
Mm,
and are new to it and, may not have the same sense of the stakes for how those things play out.
mm,
Because I think that could be a contributing factor.
yeah.
yeah, I think so too. I mean, the first thing that we did was like Kathleen Hale because we all lived through that, and so we had
Yeah.
this like example. I mean, and
Yeah.
there are more, right? There's so
Yeah.
many other examples that you can kind of give. But I don't think maybe that like people who are entering a book space for the first time or reviewing books for the first time have like those war stories yet. When things have gone positively, like all of your interactions with authors have been great so far. But it's going to take, I hope not, but I think that like if it leads to another Kathleen Hale situation on Book Talk, that will be the moment where they're like, oh, so this is why you said like these interactions,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that because it's like you guys already said, it's that it's a newer community and they don't know the context of previous communities. So like I'm seeing a lot of indie authors right now who have like these huge followings and they make these books that are all based on tropes and then they have these like huge author interactions or these huge like fan interactions before the book even comes out. They make all of this hype around a book that's not even out yet, and then they have beta readers and arc readers at the same time. So it's all this stuff that I'm like, no, if you would have just been in the other communities, then you would know that there's a process and that we don't do these things that you are doing because you're going to end up in a position where you don't want to be. And then they make these TikToks where it's like they're reading their early reviews and they're like responding to them, and I'm like, what are you doing? No. And I'm seeing this more on TikTok than I am anywhere else, which leads me to understand like TikTok just hasn't had their like big reckoning yet with somebody like Kathleen Hale. And even though like what I experienced recently happened, I don't think that it had an effect the way that Kathleen Hale had an effect on the book community on the internet at large.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I can. So it's gonna keep happening.
No sleep tonight.
So yeah, that's my.
Yes.
You know how to play it, then why am I helping you right now?
Yeah, I think it's gonna take something bad happening, like really bad happening, but maybe not. I mean, I try to be a glass half full kind of gal, like maybe, but I do think it is very funny watching kind of the cyclical nature of these conversations, because I think like, I don't know, I guess it says something about human nature that we keep having the same problems over and over again, regardless of the platform. So I don't know, maybe we won't get better.
The nature of a book community in general, because it always really much, it always starts with like a group of readers. And as that continues to go on, then it becomes, okay, well, readers and aspiring authors and then published authors. And so it becomes like that, like, I don't know, that weird murky area. As much as I hope that we don't get like a whole full-blown stalker thing on Book Talk, I think what will continue to be messy is like book talkers getting published, and this idea of like, okay, where do we review them? Like we saw the first part of that when Alex Astor was published, and people were giving positive reviews and like defending her, and then like the next week it was announced that all of those people that were like giving the honest review, positive reviews or what, like were hosting stops on her tour, and they were all friends. So it was like, wait a second, something here is like.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Mari, because when I have my book published, I'm going to assume that all of you.
This is my favorite book I have ever read.
There are no problems with it. It is
none at all.
It's like Mara. I don't know how to pronounce
it. Never met her. Don't know her.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is interesting. Like I'm actually like right now I'm beta reading for a friend who was a reviewer moving into wanting to be an author, and it's like it's an interesting transition that some people do well and other people don't. And and I guess kind of one thing with all of this is for people who do want feedback that is intended to be helpful, at least 3 of us you can hire to do that. So, like Mara, I don't think you do that, but like the rest of us do. So like, if you really want like critical feedback,
yeah, pay these ladies for their labor.
Listen, you can pay me to be mean to you. I'll be so mean to you.
Okay, speaking of TikTok and being mean to people, have you seen, I keep getting, I don't know what this says about me, but I keep getting served this woman who did an interview and she's like a dom who looks like she's probably 55 now, and literally men pay her to come over and like clean her apartment and yell at them. And I'm like, how do I get this job? Like, I
Right?
messed up in my path thus far because this is
You're revealing your FYP right now.
I know. I'm like, I don't know what to, it's that and lesbians, so I don't know.
Mari, somebody apparently wanted your critical feedback.
Oh no! I also, okay, so this goes back to what I was saying about like door salesmen, is that I've put spam filters in place because I'm just like, I need to filter some of this stuff out. But I also end up like missing sometimes like genuine business requests. So if I haven't gotten back to you, that was absolutely not by design. A lot of people end up in my spam, and I do my best to go through all of it, but it's hard to determine like who's the bot that is like, dear, my name is Buddy Nis, you are so great, and like what is it genuine like
sorry. It is very funny when you have like a moniker, because it makes it easier to spot, because it'll be like, dear books like whoa.
Yeah, dear beautifully bookish Bethany, and I'm like,
mine is just Reeds. Dear Reeds.
First name Reeds, last name Rachel.
You know what's really great is when you accidentally get emails sent to the wrong creator, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I got like a request to do like a sponsorship that it was like total like wrong name. It was like, dear Maya, we want to pay you, you know, the X amount of money to do this. And I was like, me? Dear Maya, because
sorry, did you want me to
Myrtle
this?
Yeah, dear Myrtle, we have these beautiful scars we'd like you to sell. We think your channel is perfect. And I'm like,
Myrtle.
And Damien, I agree. Dom work is work, even if it's being mean to people cleaning your toilet. I agree. Sex work is work. I just am saying that's 100%. Work I would be happy to perform.
One of my best friends was doing that before COVID. And she's like, man, I would get back into it if COVID had never happened. I would still be doing it. And I was like, yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
What a great job.
Oh man.
Somebody posted a question earlier. I just thought I'd throw this out there of like, what about a review? I think it was Christopher said this at some point, but like, what if there's a review that is being homophobic, racist, whatever, to the author in the review? Do you think that the author is entitled to engage at that point, or should they still rise above?
I think I have like an example of one time that I saw an author respond to a review where I felt like, okay, I see why you did this, but I also appreciated the way that they did it. So it was Sylvia Moreno Garcia.
Yeah.
I forget which book it was.
Mexican
Gothic, where there is a seizure that happens, and it's like a historical like story. So somebody says something like, put a spoon in her mouth to stop the seizure. And so the person who was reviewing was like, this is like medical misinformation. I think they even called it like ableist at one point or whatever. And that review started gaining traction, like it was spreading on TikTok, on Twitter. So Sylvia Moreno Garcia responded to the review, but I don't think she tagged the reviewer. She was just like, hey, this is being said about my work. I just want you to know that on page immediately somebody says that doesn't work about the spoon. Like, so it is presented as a solution to the seizure, but almost immediately, like somebody says, no, that doesn't work. But this review, like, you know, kind of takes that out of context, and she kind of left it there. And I think that is something that like, that is not an opinion-based thing. It is like it's misrepresenting something that was like on the page. And I did appreciate that she addressed that idea without like coming for the reviewer. So there is like a space where, again, I think that you can sort of talk about your own work, especially in like general senses of like, I've heard this about my work and this is what I think about that, you know. That is not coming for an author or entering their space. That is you talking about your own work, and I think that's valid.
There's another example I can think of where the author's response was not great, but I understand why it was necessary. So Ava Reed, who wrote Juniper and Thorn, there was a review that basically talked about, and Juniper and Thorn was based on a very dark old fairy tale that has like cannibalism and child death in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this reviewer was like upset because they didn't like realize that it was horror, even though it was comped as this really old kind of disgusting fairy tale, and like Shirley Jackson, right? And so they read this book and they're like, I didn't realize it was horror. It was disgusting. It was like sexually gratuitous. And Ava Reed was like, well, because of my history as a CSA victim, I wanted to explore that theme of being like hypersexualized or hypersexual. And that was like the point. And Ava was very upset, understandably, about this review. And on the one hand, I'm like, wow, you shouldn't have been reading your reviews and put yourself in that position. But at the same time, I do think that the review was perpetuating misinformation that was harmful about the content and the point of this book, and how necessary it is to have these conversations about horror and using horror as a platform to have these discussions in these places that victims of certain things can discuss, very difficult topics. And so it lives in sort of a gray area for me, in that where like Sylvia Moreno Garcia did it very well. Ava Reed did it kind of like, not great, but like I get it. But on the other hand, the response was not great. So there's a lot of like really gray areas here. And then we have like all these book banning issues recently. So like George M. Johnson, they are having to combat, All Boys Aren't Blue being taken out of the hands of readers who should have access to it, who need access to it.
Because of things being taken out of context.
Yeah. So that kind of thing.
Yeah. An example of when this was done poorly in my experience was when Daniel Green, who is also like was a booktuber, is now I don't know, does some book related content. He published a book.
Oh, yeah.
Found a review on like Reddit about his book, and the book is about like cops. It has a propaganda element to it. It is fantasy. I read it, so I know.
I remember your review.
Yes.
It is fantasy. It has a propaganda element, and what the reviewer was basically saying was like, in this economy about propaganda, but also like some of the messages that were attached to saying about cops or whatever. And Daniel responded directly to the.
I remember that.
And to defend like his honor and be like, I don't support cops and I'm not a racist. And it's kind of like, wait, like that's where it enters like a weird gray area of you directly responding to a reviewer, first of all. Like, I don't know, there is a tendency to sort of read something and interpret it and then attach that to the author, like what the lines are there of like, if an author writes this, do they believe it and whatnot? And that's kind of like a separate conversation. But you can't combat that at the level of like every reviewer who gives you a negative review.
Yeah. That was the last time I hosted a panel about this, when that happened with, I think, Alexa and maybe someone else. But yeah, take a shot every time this conversation comes back up, because it keeps happening over and over again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, that took me back though. I'd forgotten about that one.
Yeah, I know. Right?
I recently got a comment on my channel from Daniel Green, and I was like, maybe you shouldn't be here. I didn't even say anything. I was just like, well,
and YouTube tells you when it's a channel that's bigger than yours that comments. So it's like you don't even have plausible deniability.
No, it popped up on my phone, and I was like, Daniel. Oh yeah. Oh dear.
Yeah.
I mean, and I love some propaganda as much. I mean, we love in death, right? I mean, like we're
I love propaganda as much as the next girl should not love propaganda.
Yeah. But
But that's, I mean, I think the takeaway is there might be valid reasons to respond to information in a review, but don't ever respond directly to the reviewer. Like
Yes.
if there's something you must respond to, do it in an anonymized, separate fashion that is providing information to your other readers without directly like referencing that reviewer. Like, I mean, I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Like, are there sometimes reasons? Sure, but how you do it matters.
Talk about your work by all means,
Yeah.
not at me.
Well, and also, I mean, I get wanting to like defend your honor, and I also get like feeling. I mean, defensiveness is a natural human response. But
Yeah.
I will say that if I was hearing that there were a lot of reviews telling me that, for instance, my work was sexist, I would hope that that would cause me to pause and reflect and think like, is this element there?
Yeah.
And have some
But
reflection about
but
that.
that requires being willing to listen.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
after I
know?
finished dying inside, because I would be like, oh my God. Like if that was like the pervasive takeaways, like Mara is a sexist or Mara's a homophobe or whatever, I would be like, where have I gone wrong in my life? Like,
Myrtle is a sexist.
yeah, exactly. Myrtle. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And I think that like the inclination to respond to some sort of criticism like that of like, oh, this book is, problematic or sexist, or it's got like propaganda with, well, I'm not a insert. It is like so beyond the point at that point of like what a review is, again, of a work, of the messages in the work, of like what that reader read and interpreted, you not thinking that you're a insert thing here. It still doesn't say, it has nothing to do with the review.
Right.
Like again, it's like having two different conversations that are kind of missing each other and shouldn't be happening in the same space.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but like I also know in my time on YouTube, there have been a few times that I've had people like privately reach out to me to be like, "Hey, you're saying this thing or using this word or doing this thing that's like potentially causing harm to a community."
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, okay. I didn't realize. I'm so sorry. Let me work on fixing that." And so like it's I don't know. Like so I just but I didn't take it as like I'm this ism
Mm,
because I did a thing. It's more like I have to learn and grow, and there are things I didn't realize, and I don't want to hurt people, and let me be better
Or
at that.
that we
I don't
all
know.
are all isms. Like
Well,
we live
that's true too.
in a very broken world. Like if somebody was
Yeah,
like, "You're being ableist," I'd be like, "You're probably right." Like, yeah, I probably should think about that.
yeah,
Um,
that's true.
and
That
yeah,
happens constantly. But I mean, I'm glad that people feel like they can tell me, because
yeah,
then I don't do it again.
yeah.
Right.
Like recently, I talked about the whole Susan Meacham thing again, and I said,
Which whoa, that was a ride. Whew.
uh, so like in that video, I said like, well, Susan says that she did this because of her mental illness, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm mentally ill, and I never thought to fake my death. And people responded saying like, that's not what you should be saying, and I'm like, oh shit, you're right, because that's not it. And it's not like I can speak for every mental illness. I can't speak for bipolar disorder, so you're right. And I'm glad that people tell me these things, because then I don't do them again.
Yeah.
And that's good, and that's helpful.
Yeah.
So we are closing in on an hour and a half, so we might want to wrap things up. I know it's a little late. Any kind of final thoughts
or final questions.
or final questions that people might have in the comments?
I think that our final thought maybe should be something along the lines of like, what do we think authors should be doing instead of going to reviews? Like, what is your big piece of advice?
Have a group chat.
Step one, get a group chat.
Fucking group chat. Please call your mother.
My best friend Nicole and I had like $1 million idea. We still haven't executed, but it would be like basically a service like find me a group chat kind of service,
Oh my
or
God.
or even if we can find you a group chat, we will be your group chat. You
Yeah.
you subscribe to us, we're your group chat. Whatever you're going to post on the internet, just send it to us, and we'll respond accordingly, or we'll tell you post it, don't post it. That way, so many mistakes would be avoided if you just had your group chat that you could just send a little thought to, and somebody would go, no, that's the bad thought. Like, don't do it.
Have a group chat and assume I behave, and I'm not that I do this perfectly, you know, especially when I get through some wine. But I behave as if everything I say on the internet is findable forever by anyone. Like, I act like anybody could find anything I have to say. So, like, if you think that you're going to be slick and like slip in a comment here or there and no one's going to find it.
Oh no,
No.
Vanessa.
Oh
no.
The cringe.
Oh, that's so
Shannon
bad.
Stacy riding up to the bone season.
Oh my God.
Book club live stream.
You were okay. So a book club live stream
Or what was her name?
discussion on YouTube, and the author of the book joined the live stream. Oh no.
No.
Oh, that is not it.
Immediately, I'm turning it off. Immediately, like I'm shutting the whole thing down. I'm leaving.
Whew. I just saw that comment and I was like, oh my
God.
God.
Yeah. But see, to my point, that author thought they were being slick. They thought they were being cute, dive bombing in there. And now all however many hundred of us in here know. Like, it's forever. People will find out. You're not going to just get away with things.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yep.
Yeah. I will, like, I do not envy authors the sort of moment in publishing that we are in right now, because I think that you know, readers have more access to you than ever. Publishing is doing less marketing than ever, and it's sort of
they're
like
doing jack shit for you.
And it's sort of a given that in addition to being the author of this book, you also have to be like the marketer and like a social media guru. And it is incredibly difficult, I think, to be an author currently.
Yeah, I agree.
That being said, I think that you have to realize that sort of the marketing of your book and how you exist in spaces where you are interacting with readers for that marketing is different than coming across a review of your book. Reviews are different. Not all content that is on a bookish platform is a review. And so when we say don't go into review spaces, we're not saying don't engage at all with readers anywhere ever. A review is a review. Don't go in there and interact with the review of your work. But go forth and market and do what you got to do. So I think that sort of drawing those lines and those boundaries of like, okay, here is where I can be, here's where I will interact, here's where I'm going to market, like that needs to be clear for any author as they're putting their plans together.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, agreed.
It is a tough time to be an author online.
Get some beta readers. Get a group chat. Get beta readers. Get into writing workshops.
And get people who aren't just gonna like blow smoke up your ass. I don't know, like, you know, like get people who will be honest with you, because I think that sometimes that's an issue too, where I feel like people have beta readers, but I don't think they're being very honest. Yeah, I mean, but I get that it's difficult.
Yeah, I think figure out too, like whose opinion matters to you, like who, you know, what is the feedback that you want to hear, and like who, if they said like, yeah, you could work on this, like you would be like, okay, it's like we were saying about the people we follow and for what, you know, I would imagine that if I wrote a book and some of these people were like, it's the worst thing I've ever read, I'd be like, I really don't care. I've seen what's the sound? I've seen what you cheer for, or whatever it is. Like your opinion doesn't matter to me. So just kind of like sussing that out, which again, like sometimes authors are like big mad, and I'm like, why does my opinion matter to you? Please go figure out whose voice you want to listen to, and like stick to that, and don't wander too far from that.
Well, and I also think, and I know it's hard, but I think having some emotional distance from your work is really healthy. Like, it makes me think about how in like marriage therapy, they talk about like, there's me, there's you, and then there's our relationship. And we're just talking about our relationship. We're not talking about you or me individually. And I
Mhm.
think if you can develop that kind of like, I am not my book, like,
Mhm.
they're two separate things. I think that's probably a very healthy mindset to try to engage
Yeah.
everything with.
Baby step toward that every reader could learn to do, which would be good for them, is like, I am not my favorite books.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
And
wow. We
you
didn't even get to the fandom side of this, but
Mhm.
yes.
Yes.
please.
because that's the thing is it's like if you can even get to the point of recognizing that like books that you love, other people can dislike because they like different things, like and be okay with that, that's a good step.
Yeah. I
You
think
know?
also, like, this is on the reviewer end too, but like making those distinctions between what is reviewing a book and what is like reviewing a person, and those
Mhm.
kind of distinctions that we made between like, okay, what is, me and my opinion about this work, and what is this author maybe behaving badly, or like things like, things that is sort of separate from their work, and being clear about those lines, I think helps as a reviewer if that's kind of the space that you're in. And then for authors, realizing that once your work is published, it is out in the world. This is part of publishing, is that once you publish, it is out for consumption, and it is no longer just your baby. You didn't just write it for you, because you now have an audience. So if it was just for you, it would have been your journal entry, but you published it, so it now has an audience, and sort of feedback to whatever it is that you put in front of an audience is part of your job. It is
Yeah.
part of the industry, and you have to be able to find the tools to deal with that, or else you are in the wrong job.
Mhm.
And that's it.
Well, and to the people's point earlier about how like the things that people were saying to Rachel, they would never say to a traditional media reviewer. Maybe
Right.
a good rule of thumb is if you wouldn't say it to Ron Charles, don't say it to someone on the internet. Like you wouldn't say it to the New York Times reviewer,
Yeah.
don't say it to
Don't say it to
Joe
the
Schmo.
booktuber or the
Yeah.
TikToker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. Yep. 100%.
But it is I do feel for authors because like being traditionally published kind of sucks ass at this point. Like I know that they get you better. Oh, sorry. I just realized there's a child in the room. Sucks, eggs. Uh but like I guess they get you the distribution, but like the level of marketing that you get at this point from traditional publishing is really just like nothing. So I get that they're in the trenches just like trying to sell some
Yeah.
books.
Mhm.
It's hard. And I mean, I think the thing is there are people out there who are gonna like them, but and I know we said this before, but negative reviews are good for sales. Nobody trusts a book. I don't trust it, but like if I go to a Goodreads page and it's all 5-star reviews, I'm like,
At work, we
something's up.
literally talk about having organic less than 5-star reviews.
I think that Lightlark is an example of how one-star reviews cause more sales, to be honest. Lightlark is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, like, regardless of if it's like the negative review or the content of it, part of the reason is that negative reviews, like, the algorithms love negative reviews.
They
Mhm.
do.
So the reason that it's going to sell more books anyway is that because like 2 to 3 times more people is going to see that negative review through no fault of my own. TikTok's just like, negativity.
Uh,
Out to the masses.
oh my
So
god.
like, just take it that way. Like, I didn't like your book, but I just, hundreds of thousands of people just heard about it because of that negative review. And if you can take it in that spirit, I think it's helpful to like reframe in your own mind.
Well, look at that project we all just did where we were reading 10 years of Goodreads Choice Awards. All of us were suffering, and I would say like a solid 25% of my comments were, "Why am I enjoying all of you guys hating these books
Oh
so
my
much?"
gosh,
And it's
I
like, I
know, I
know,
know.
guys.
And like it's continuing to get way more views than any of my videos do this far out too. So like it's like
You know,
negativity.
again, mine is too. It's like the staying power of this video is like very interesting, and most of my comments now are like, YouTube recommended this to me, and like I found you because of that, because YouTube is actually showing this video to people.
Yeah.
Because again, algorithms love
negativity. Well,
Yeah.
and
I've had
the
all
fact
of your
that we
videos
were all doing it
re-recommended
at the
to me.
same time. Yeah.
Yeah, even though I've seen all of your
there.
videos, they've like, hey, you watched this once. Do you want to watch it again? Like they're
the interconnectedness of it all, the fact that we all posted at the same time, and people are like traveling
and tagging each other.
Mhm.
YouTube is like, oh, look at this
Like we
web
like
and
this.
storm, this cloud of negativity.
This web of negativity. Let's push it to everybody.
Wasn't even intentional.
We really hacked the algorithm there. We really
I know. Right?
Well, stay tuned, everyone. We have
we were like, we're gonna read all these books, and by the end we were like
yeah, it's like I filmed my reaction and I started so positive, like, what books do I get to read? And then you just slowly see the hope draining from my eyes.
Whereas for me, I started off exactly how I ended. This is gonna be shit, and it was. Perfect.
Oh, there were some great thumbnails from that.
It was. They were great videos, honestly.
Yeah, Bree, she was emotionally broken. Poor Bree, she had like a journey she had to go on.
Oh, yeah, Bree.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Let's see, what's this? Yes. Well, and stay tuned. We may have more for you in the future.
We may. I may have gotten a package or something recently.
Someone tell YouTube that we are tricking it into pushing us.
Susan's listening right now, and she was like, "Yeah, Vanessa, I was the one who had to read all those Stephen King books."
You and Ollie.
Ollie was so polite.
I lucked out in the debut category. I feel like mine was like super easy because I had no series, like just 10 books. That was it, like nothing additional. And it was funny because I was like, can I do something that's not debut? And it was like, oh, fantasy was taken. I was like, okay, I'll do it. And by the end, I was like, yes.
Well, for one thing, if it's a debut, it's got some kind of genuine hype to it for some reason versus like just Stephen King.
Yeah.
But your video was so, oh my God. But your video was so chaotic. I loved it. I was like, I'm so stressed right now, even though I know she makes this deadline.
I got no sleep. I was so tired. Oh, so good.
Oh
man.
Oh yeah, Brie. I can't believe we did that to you during Black History Month. That was wrong.
I'm so sorry. Oh goodness. Yes, and Angela read a lot of Cassandra Clare.
Oh, poor woman. Oh God.
I love the tone of hers though, because it was sort of like she was describing dispassionately like the rise of the forces that led to World War II. She would be like, and here you see that Bardugo is starting to gain some momentum that will inevitably I was like, I love the way that you're just like, oh, here comes Sarah J. Maas. She's about to dominate.
It's like the history of it. It was very interesting. Yeah.
That was so fun to see how everyone approached the same prompt.
Yeah. Meanwhile, apparently Andy Weir dominates science fiction. All 3 books he's published have won. Why?
I've only read Artemis, and that was quite enough for me.
Because mediocrity sells. That's why.
Yeah.
Hate it.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on my.
Oh man. Though I think you've given me. You've given me the push to finally read Such a Fun Age.
Yeah,
it's so good. Oh, you haven't read it? Oh, it's very good.
Well, it was so hyped there for a while, and I was kind of, you never know, but I was like, oh, I really should go back and read that because it sounds like it's really good.
I think you'd like it. It's really good.
Such a good one to shush. Thank you. That is such a good one to buddy read with somebody. If you're going back and forth, being like, "Did you see what she said?" It's so good.
I inspired somebody else in my Discord to read it too, and they were just like sending live updates. like she said this, and like it's one of those experiences that you like cannot believe your eyes or your
It's great.
ears.
It's one of those things where it's like juicy, but with a point.
See, I love tea. I love gossip of all
Mhm.
kind, or like anything that's
Oh,
like
you're gonna love it.
juicy. So
Mhm.
this sounds like it's right up
You're
my
gonna
alley.
love it.
I think you'll love it.
It,
It's great.
it is juicy.
Go read it
guys.
right now. Go read it right now.
I might be reading something else that somebody on this call recommended to me.
Ooh.
Oh,
Stay
then-
tuned till next
okay.
week.
Oh, goodness.
Oh man. All right, y'all. Well, hopefully this was helpful and informative, and it'll be so interesting to see the actual comment section on this. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for Mari for very last minute joining in as
Yes.
well.
Thank you for having me.
Yay.
Pinch hitter.
I hope I did
This was
Ashley
great.
proud. I didn't.
I think so. Appreciate it.
Good.
Ashley was unable to make it, but yeah, no, this was I think a really good conversation, and I know we've had these conversations before and will again, but
Well, let's put this on the calendar. Who's got a prediction? Are you like 18 months,
A
2
couple
years?
you know,
Yeah, well, I'll be back here
like
again.
we circle back to this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make it yearly.
Rachel's like, I can't survive another round of this.
Just leave me alone.
Yeah. And if you really want our feedback, me, Mari, and Rachel, you can pay us for it.
Yes. Pay these women for their labor.
And then when
So-
Mara sells a book, and we're all going to read it and say, we really love this book a lot.
I have never heard of this author in my life, but this book was amazing.
And Mara will stay out of our comment sections.
Well, I'll publish it under my real name so then I can come and comment.
Oh.
With books like, whoa. And then I can be like, this sounds like a great book, guys.
Diabolical.
Oh no! You know somebody's doing that with
My
their
stock
username.
account's already baked in.
Imagine. Oh no. Yeah.
Oh my God. Can you imagine what I would never recover?
On the next author's behaving badly.
Oh my God.
Oh no!
It's me with like two little devil horns and like a mustache drawn on my face.
Who would have thought?
Betrayed by one of our own.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! All right. Well, thanks everybody. Have a great night and have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.